Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Star Trek Critic, where we pick out all the errors of each episode as if it was a school project, taking points away until there is nothing left. And even in the original Star Trek series, there are a few shows that should have never been made, and this is one of them, The Changeling. Get ready, we are going to take a lot of points away today. The Enterprise is trying to contact the Malurians, but they are getting no response, and the sensors are saying there is no signs of life or any sign of a war or disease. They did make contact with him a week earlier. Too bad we don't get to watch the Cymbeline Bloodburn in action. The first point is lost here when Kirk calls for Red Alert, and everyone decides to run aimlessly through the hallways. And why don't Kirk and Uhura and Spock sit down? Look closely, the blast is so rough the helm console gets knocked loose. Here we learn women have matching underwear. The next point is lost because they survived. Spock says the blast was the equivalent of 90 photon torpedoes. Seriously? In Star Trek VI, A More Accurate Space Attack, they lost shields after 6 torpedoes. 90 torpedoes would have blown up the Death Star. The next point is lost since Spock says they are at 20% shields and Kirk says they can hold off 3 more attacks, which is 270 more photon torpedoes. That's not happening. Spock says the blast came in at warp 15, which in the original series calculator for warp speed, that's 3,300 times the speed of light. That's impossible. Not only is warp speed in its own dimension, your ship is 10 minutes away at that speed. You're actually 36,000 astronomical units away, so minus 1 point. That explains why you can't see anything. And then they fire 1 photon torpedo. The target absorbs the energy, and Kirk is like, how is that possible? The Enterprise just absorbed the equivalent of 90. Why is he blown away that this object absorbed just 1? The object fires another missile. Spock says they are all going to die. And it is Lieutenant Uhura who saved them all.
Yes!
Didn't she do this also in a movie about the same type of attack? The next point is lost since all that firepower can't possibly come out of something the size of that small cylinder. And then Spock goes into a 1960s approved for TV speech on how size doesn't matter. Scotty's like, yeah, right. This can be taken in more than one way. And the reason it doesn't fire again is because Jim Kirk is on board and Nomad thinks he is the creator. I agree with Scotty on this one. Nomad beams aboard and he is quite annoying. And although they are concerned about it asking to see a star chart, the one they do show him is so archaic he will never find us. It is now the year 2020, which means it's our generation to blame for all this mess. Nomad is such a threat that Spock actually lies when it mistakes Kirk for its creator, which really alerts Kirk, so they shuffle right out of there and leave Singh to fend for himself. The backstory is Nomad launched in 2002 by Jackson Roy Kirk. The mission was to seek out intelligent life, but they believe it collided with them in a meteor shower and was lost. It must have been a highly top-secret construction, which is why you can only get this basic design image. The only reason it didn't destroy the Enterprise is because its Kirk is Roy Kirk. If it is really dangerous, then they should beam it out into space and scatter its molecules. But they didn't, so minus 1 point. Lieutenant Uhura starts to sing, but I don't understand these lyrics at all. There is no way Nomad can turn the handle on the turbolift to make it work, so minus 1 point. Have you noticed Scotty always gets the best lines? And Lieutenant Uhura looks beautiful in every shot. Sulu doesn't say much in this episode, does he? She is a beautiful singer, but this singing lesson went really bad. 2 episodes in a row, Scotty stands up for a girl and gets the shit beat out of him. I'm sure that had something to do with his stuntman's contract. Lieutenant Uhura had her memory wiped, and Scotty's dead now. Even in such a tragic scene, Spock is able to lighten the mood with some educational humor. And this scene getting medical information for Nomad seems to take an extra long time. I think it's to show how tense the situation is supposed to be. Here and a few other places you can see the cable holding up Nomad, so minus 1 point. And when Nomad follows McCoy here, you ask, what happened to Lieutenant Uhura's chair? It should be right where we're standing. Would a dead person have his hands at his sides like that? McCoy is a little short with Nurse Chapel right here. She doesn't look too thrilled about his comment. Scotty is back to life. but Nomad can't do anything for Lieutenant Uhura. McCoy wants a fight with Nomad. Spock wants to study it. Of course, it did kill 4 billion people, so Kirk wants to neutralize it. These are two stubborn creatures in a logical standoff. Boom, Mike, Shadow, so -1 point. I will have to take a point here for not standing the test of time where Nurse Chapel is teaching Uhura English with a first grade reader. Supposedly her mind is a blank slate, but if her mind is blank, how does she become fluent in Swahili? And if Nomad only blanked her mind to a certain time, like where she was already fluent in Swahili, she would be much more skilled at learning English, and the ship's computer also would have a Swahili English language class. So I do have to take a point here. And a Vulcan can't do a mind meld with a computer. The ship's computer could have found a history log. This is just a plot device to make a weird scene with Spock and Nomad, so -1 point. The other probe, Tan-Ru, was meant to sterilize soil samples. There is no way this merger could create the power it has, so -1 point. Although Nomad doesn't look like two merged probes, it is possible that they discarded excess parts after they repaired themselves. Kirk's definition of changeling doesn't really match what Nomad is, but he's close enough. Nomad makes his move and zaps a few security guards. Then Nomad goes into engineering to speed up the ship, but Scotty doesn't want it. What is an interfactor? It is possible for Nomad to bypass helm control, but the Enterprise should probably explode at warp 11, and it didn't, so -1 point. Kirk sends Nomad to his room, but Nomad is becoming harder for Kirk to handle. This happened in Charlie X, too. Another point is lost since the captain's log talks down to the audience like you forget what happened before the commercials. We're going through red shirts fast in this show. How did Nomad get this far without being noticed? Especially when there's these guys on the same ladder, so -1 point. Here you see the alert Kirk to sickbay, but the sign on the door says that this is McCoy's quarters, not sickbay, so -1 point. Nomad takes off to be annoying somewhere else. But do either Kirk or Spock call security? No, so -1 point. It looks like Nomad is trying to do some fact-checking on his creator. Nomad has cut life support to get rid of all those human infestations on the Enterprise. And another point is lost here for Kirk outthinking a computer. He did this in Return of the Archons too, and Nomad self-destructing for making a mistake probably wouldn't happen. Nomad is too stubborn and self-centered. He simply would have killed Kirk and Spock for lying about it in the first place. Kirk performs the Picard maneuver. So is anyone ever going to take care of these bodies laying on the ground? The engineers that came in just moved them out of the way so they can sit down, so -1 point. Now they beam Nomad into space so it can explode, which is what they should have done in the first place. This is why you never beam aboard a probe that just wiped out 4 billion people and almost destroyed your ship. All communications with it could have been done while it was in space, but they didn't do that, so -1 point. This screenshot came out pretty good. In the final scene of Bad Jokes, you see a blonde communications officer who is sitting behind Kirk, but in the close-ups of Kirk, she isn't there, so -1 more point. And we'll just leave the bad jokes out this time. Yes! After all, it did kill 4 billion people and 4 of his security guards, and Lieutenant Uhura won't be the same for a while. Vic Perrin was famous for voiceovers. He is the voice of the Keeper, the Metrons, and we will see him next week in person in Mirror Mirror. Maquis Blaisdell was born in Hawaii, graduated from BYU. He also played Spinelli in Space Seed, but unfortunately had a very short life. So does the Changeling withstand the test of time? Leave your comments below. And the Changeling gets a score of 79%. Next week on Battlestar Galactica, Baltar finds this probe, which can kill millions. That is all for now. Leave your comments below. Be sure to check out my other videos and playlists. Click that like button, the share button, and the subscribe button, and I will see you next week.